sometimes, and most of the times, I'm nice to my distractors. But then there are times where I just have to say, are you just plain stupid or are you just plain dumb? Because in the video in question, the biblical Jesus never existed. I drew a huge distinction between the biblical Jesus, miracle Jesus, and Son of God Jesus, and a historical figure that the stories of the biblical Jesus have come from, they originate from, and how one is probably a real person that then became legend. But yet, you first part of your statement is to invoke Bart Ehrman and how he acknowledges Jesus of Nazareth as a historical being and the ancients as a historical being. At no point did I say that he was not. I say it's a probability that he was. But the video was about the biblical version. So are you just plain stupid or are you just plain dumb? I don't know. You'd have been better off leaving that part out and just sticking to the second part, because I still would have made a video about the second part of your statement, which is when it comes to the influence, impact, and historicity, historical documentation, Jesus stands unmatched, leaving a legacy far greater than all others combined. Lying as liar. You see, the first part that you have to realize is that the historical documentation to which you are claiming for Jesus, 98% of that historical documentation are merely copies of what someone else originally wrote. Meaning like this. Every run of Spider-Man, they run like 500,000 to a million copies. Every run of Superman, they run 500,000 to a million copies. Your level of historical documentation runs in the same manner. This scribe copied this scribe, and then this scribe copied that scribe. So they are merely just copies. So they are not original works. They are not works of different people. It is merely an overwhelming majority just copies. And that copy just shows the popularity of a subject matter in a society that had the ability to continuously copy someone else's writings. So unless you are talking about, well, you cannot be talking about all these other the smaller percentile, the 5 to 2% of original writings that have survived concerning Jesus. Whether we're talking about Irenaeus or we're talking about Justin Martyr, none of the ancient historians who lived in the time frame of Jesus wrote about Jesus. Tacitus wrote about people who believed in a Jesus. You know, Josephus talked about multiple Jesuses. So those would be the part of that 5 to 2%. The overwhelming majority is just copies. So that part, nah. Now, as far as Jesus' impact on the world, you said the combined of everybody in the world. Right off the bat, one of the first thought processes I have is Romulus. Romulus was the founder of the city-state of Rome. Rome then grew to be a conquering empire. Rome conquered the entire Mediterranean, most of Europe, all in up through to Asia, North Africa. And what has been the impact of Rome conquering such a vast empire? We have roads, we have concrete, we have a system of government that the overwhelming majority of the world has replicated based on Rome. And yes, you can say that some of what Rome is based on is the Greeks, but the Greeks didn't impact the world in the same degree. But so our democratic republic form of government that has spread to the majority of the world is based on Rome. Now, so that means that the overwhelming majority of the population share the impact of the roads, the concrete that allows us to build buildings and live in places where man should not be living in, that the Roman system, advent of concrete and their roads that connected people and transmitted information faster and moved armies faster, that has been more of an impact than Jesus on a person's everyday life. And the form of government to which the majority of people are experiencing. See, The majority of people in the world do not experience Jesus or Christianity, but the majority of people in the world do experience some form of a democratic republic. So therefore, Romulus has had more impact on the world than Jesus. Also, to add to that thought process, impact. The impact of the Roman Empire with its form of with this form of nation building and how governments have formed themselves based on that form of government with monarchies, their own forms of imperialism, that spurned off the Europeans to colonize more than half the planet, and through that colonization, it has impacted the growth or lack of growth of peoples in Africa and India and in the Americas, the indigenous people of those countries, and the impact is still living on today. It created it because slavery was part of the Roman Empire, as it was part of most countries during that time frame. But that advent of that slavery being under Roman styled imperialism also impacted the world and more people far greater than Christianity ever has. So just Romulus alone has impacted the world far greater than Jesus. So then if I were to start adding people like Imhotep, who was the true father of medicine that Hippocrates and Galen learned from, then that form of medicine that later the Greeks and other people stood on the shoulders of Imhotep, we now have the surgeries and we now have the medicines based on plant-based medicines, even though we've chemicalized them. And even that aspect comes from the alchemy of understanding from the Egyptians, because through alchemy you get chemistry. So biology and chemistry were based on the teachings of Imhotep. We don't know who Imhotep learned from, but they're based on Imhotep's teachings. So therefore, Imhotep's and all the medical science that we have today has impacted the world far greater than Jesus, because there are more people on the planet who benefit from medicines and surgeries than there are people who worship or believe in Jesus. So the impact is far greater from Imhotep than it is of Jesus. So that's two people who have virtually eclipsed your Jesus individually, and put them together, because you said combined, then they have much, they are so far beyond Jesus, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. See, you Christians like to think that Jesus has impacted the world to such a degree, but he has not. Jesus didn't stop slavery, Jesus allowed slavery. Jesus didn't stop the mistreatment of women, except that one time with the one woman. But Jesus didn't say treat all women equally as you treat men. So Jesus was not a women's lib kind of person. Jesus wasn't against the world level of imperialism at the time. He talked about a different kingdom that wasn't on earth. He was fine with giving unto Caesar what is Caesar, and respecting and keeping the governmental system that was in place and all its rules and laws. So Jesus was not as impactful as you think, because y'all like to think that Jesus has saved souls and saved people's lives and he's a blessing to the world. But the overwhelming majority of the world at all times has not believed in your Jesus. So Jesus does not have the impact to which you believe. It wasn't Jesus that freed slaves in America, it was the Civil War. Right? And there were people who believed in Jesus who fought to keep the slaves, and there were people who believed in Jesus who fought to free the slaves. Whoever had the better guns and generals are the ones who won, and resources. Those are the ones who won the war. So, no, sir. Sometimes I have to ask, are you just plain stupid, or are you just plain dumb? And next time you ask me a question, I'll be polite. But this time, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Because the video that you spoke on should have caused you not to write that first part. But anyway, always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.